What is going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And with round 4 upon us this weekend, it is time to get my tips in. Surprisingly, a little bit earlier in the week than I normally do this. It's quite a shock to the system, I know. But before we dive in to get my tips locked in for round 4, time to take a little bit of a reflection on round 3. And bar one, I almost had a perfect tipping round, and I would be probably along the right wavelength of assuming here that majority of the tipsters out there would have had close enough to a perfect round if it wasn't for the West Coast upset against Port Adelaide, which is the only game that blemished my entire scoreline over the weekend. We tipped Geelong to defeat Adelaide. We did set the margin by 27. I thought it was going to be a much bigger blowout, especially with no Jordan Dawson, no Rory Laird, no Mitchell Hinge, no Mark Keane, 12 extra free kicks, and they only managed to get it done by 8 points. A margin difference of 19, but we lock away the green tick in our first correct selection. Collingwood over GWS was all but a formality. GWS's midfield have been allowing way too much opportunity for opposition midfielders to just get off the chain, and that's exactly what we saw from the likes of Ned Long, Crisp, both Dacos boys. Absolutely insane to see what GWS is affording their opponents to do in that centre line. We went Brisbane to defeat St Kilda. They did that in the end in what started off as a very abysmal showing, but ended up in an absolute onslaught in the final quarter from Brisbane, which I truly believe played Brisbane back into form, and anybody taking them on should be absolutely terrified. Fremantle to defeat Richmond by over 10 goals was all but a formality. This could have been, and should have been, the wayside of 100-120 points. It was an absolute drubbing, and if they were accurate, this could have been absolutely painful to watch. North Melbourne to defeat Essendon, a lot closer than I thought it was going to be, but we tipped North to get over the line. We tipped Port Adelaide to defeat West Coast, and West Coast have come out and won back-to-back games. The belief over in the West is big and strong, and that's exactly how I finished the round, with tipping Melbourne to defeat Carlton after being in front by 43 points and losing by 23. Saving grace, Melbourne. Thank you very much for turning things around. So with that is 6 out of 7 correct. Overall tips, I've only missed 7 so far for the entire season. I'm actually tipping incredibly well, but it's time to turn attention to the league to see how other tipsters fared. And as you can see on screen, 6 out of 7, 7. Fuck! My apologies, I'm sorry, I'm a parent, and you know, that's what the kids are doing these days. It's just playing in the back of my head all the fucking time. But 6 out of 7 was the most correct amount of tips, so putting myself aside, congratulations must go to Welsh Duke, Evelyn May, Ron Schill, Dusty Fendoff 4, Timo IE, Brisbane Rule, Nado, Skyvo, Gramercy Riff 78, Team Wiggles, Master Tipper, Christopher W, Vanessa W, and Nancy W, all tipping the most correct amount of tips for this weekend just gone. And having a look at our total tips, we have Welsh Duke, Duncan P, has been around for a hot minute with all the competitions that I have done, and I just want to thank him and any other people that have been continuously supporting the leagues that I've been hosting, and for the new people that have gotten on board, welcome aboard. It's always really humbling to do something like this and to have people turn out. And some people might look at this and turn around and say, you've only got 30 people in your competition, what are you carrying on about? But you know what, that's 29 more than I ever expect to join. So again, thank you all. If you want to get on board, if you know anybody who wants to get on board, all those links are in the description down below. Go and help yourselves. But again, Welsh Duke leading the charge in first place. I am sitting in second place. We then have Gussie McStevo, Evelyn May, and Ron Schill, all tied for third, rounding out our top 5. And then rounding out the following, we have Dusty Fendoff 4, Memazar, Footy Campfire, Timo IE, Brisbane Rule, all rounding out our top 10. But alas, we do have a couple more after that. We have Nado, Benjamin 25, Skyvo, Gramercy Riff 78, Madge Tigers, and Team Wiggles, all essentially tied for that top 10 finish. So congratulations to Welsh Duke for leading the charge. Congratulations to my top 10. Still early days. Plenty of opportunity to get into that top 10 configuration, which all starts this coming weekend. Easter football. Let's get it. Something I'm going to do a little bit differently moving on is bringing up the form of the two teams going head to head so we can have a little bit of a deeper dive before locking our tips in. It does kick off Thursday night, Brisbane hosting Collingwood at the Gabba. As you can see, both teams out of their last 5 have won 3 games and lost 2, just in a different kind of makeup. The margin here, the tipsters are going heavily in the way of Brisbane. I would assume that's because it's being played at the Gabba. Looking at their match history over the last 3 games, Collingwood has won 1 of the 3, and that was at the Gabba. Both times they have lost in recent years following were Brisbane down here. So, and down here obviously being Melbourne, because that's where I'm from. Going to be an interesting tip here, because I feel Brisbane have played themselves into form on the back end against St Kilda, but Collingwood were vastly superior for a longer period of time against GWS, and it's an interesting concept because defensively, Collingwood shifting the chains have been doing it probably as one of the best teams to do it so far this year, just being able to get things on their terms, move the ball around, pick out their targets quite easily, and they can really open up Brisbane in that retrospect. Obviously, Brisbane coming into this game, Harris Andrews still to miss a week, Darcy Gardner is now down as well, so their taller stocks have been absolutely shot. The midfield battle is going to be huge. We know Josh Dunkley probably runs a tag on somebody, maybe tries to follow a Nick Dacos around, but you're going to have opportunity for a very young Collingwood mix to take on a more seasoned and experienced Brisbane mix. We saw last week the debut of Oscar Steen in the ruck, and the way he was able to just leap at the ball and get first use to Collingwood, I feel he's going to get on the top of a Sam Draper, of a Darcy Fort. I am going to tip an upset here, and I am going to go with Collingwood to defeat Brisbane at the Gabba, at my own behest. I just feel defensively they can really open them up here. They can truly open them up. They'll be without Darcy Moore defensively. They'll be without Scott Pendlebury with that Achilles tightness as well, but I think they can get the job done without. I really do. I'm going to go Collingwood by 13 points. I think it's going to be a close contest. Again, I could just be throwing the baby out with the bathwater and absolutely fucking my tips early, but I genuinely think Collingwood can knock Brisbane off. Brisbane, normally at the Gabba, it'd be a fortress, but we've seen in recent years they've kind of fumbled at home. So you can't just say, oh, they're playing at home, so you're going to lock up the win. Going to be a great contest, though. That's all we really care about. These Thursday night spots so far have not disappointed yet. Friday night football. Good Friday football. North Melbourne taking on Carlton, and it's actually not Friday night because Friday night is later on, so this is Friday afternoon. North Melbourne taking on Carlton. Interesting game because Tristan Cherry, obviously out for 3 weeks, is a huge hit to their ruck stocks. I don't know who's going to be their backup ruckman. I don't know whether Callum Coleman-Jones is available for selection. He's probably going to have to do it on his own, but Carlton don't have that true established ruckman. Pittonet has been probably better than what people have thought this year, I feel anyway, but it opens opportunity still for North Melbourne's midfield to get ascendancy here. It's going to be a good battle because midfield-wise, these guys are absolutely stacked. You're going to have Sheasel, you're going to have McKercher getting opportunity, you're going to have Luke Davies-Uniacke, then you've got Cripps, you've got Walsh, you've got Jarvis Smith. It's going to be a great head-to-head battle. Forward of the ball, can Nick Larkey and, Paul Curtis and these types of players get, the ball moving quick enough to take advantage of a Jacob Wiedering on the lead? Will Harry Dean get up from injury from last week? We don't know. Will Zach Williams be missing with a rib injury? We don't know. Then, defensively speaking, for North Melbourne, they've found a little bit more solid output through Charlie Comben and the likes. So, will they be able to have Comben shut down Harry Mackay for long enough? This is actually more of an interesting battle this year than it would have been from previous years, I feel anyway, especially knowing that Carlton can go 6, 7, 8 goals in front by half time, and we know they're going to absolutely fucking fumble their shit in the second half. I'm actually going to go North Melbourne to win here. Carlton did get the hot start against Melbourne, do not get me wrong, but I think North Melbourne's youth is strong enough to stick against the flow of how Carlton were moving the ball. I'm very interested for the first time in a very long time to sit down and watch this game from start to finish. Some years I've kind of done it begrudgingly, but this year I'm actually really excited to get around it. Might change dependent on team announcements, which is always pending when I do my tips, but we'll go with North. Something to go a little bit against the grain. Friday night, Adelaide hosting Fremantle at Adelaide Oval. As you can see, their last few matches against each other, which if you want to have a look here as well, last year they faced each other twice. Carlton absolutely thumped them, and then North Melbourne got them later on in the season, so you can use that as a bit of form. And I think that Carlton's flogging was in Good Friday last year, so something to think about, but I still think North Melbourne. Looking at the form of Adelaide against Fremantle, out of the last 3 times they've played each other, Adelaide has gotten the best of them at Adelaide, but then when they've gone to Western Australia, they have struggled to get off the mark. This is getting played at home. Fremantle played back into a bit of form against Richmond last week. Adelaide have been sticking around with contenders, but just failing to get the job done. Now, Jordan Dawson is a possibility to not get up for this game as well, and I feel if Jordan Dawson is out, if Rory Laird is still out, their defensive line is still struggling a little bit. This could be a game where Fremantle can get some midfield ascendancy and truly get on top. But they should have done that against Richmond, and Richmond were able to stick with them for at least a half of football. Adelaide is more accomplished than Richmond, so I would assume Richmond, Adelaide can have a better run at it than Richmond did. Adelaide at home, given how I've seen them play and stand tall, let's go Adelaide. And I think Adelaide by at least 4 goals. Pending selections. I think if Dawson doesn't come back, if Laird is still out, if we don't see some things change, could go Fremantle for an outside tip. Saturday afternoon, Richmond taking on Port Adelaide. I'm going to do something so fucking stupid here. I'm tipping Richmond to win. I am probably going to get laughed at by some. You know, I am as one-eyed a Richmond supporter as you will come across. You can see the form. We have been absolutely trounced each and every time that we have played them the last 3 occasions. But Port Adelaide this year fumbled to North, fumbled to West Coast, only beaten Essendon, and I feel Essendon and Richmond, if you put them head to head, trying to take my bias out of the equation, I feel Richmond has shown better signs than Essendon has. Richmond have been able to statistically stay in the game a bit better. They've been able to compete against Carlton for a half of football at least last week. They were able to compete with Fremantle. It's just all about putting a 4-quarter performance together. Now, no Nankervis in the ruck is a big loss, but Port Adelaide not using a truly established ruckman. I mean, Jordan Sweet was only tier 2 at the Bulldogs. He's now tier 1 at Port. But we can have somebody come in and at least challenge, whether that'll be a Campbell Gray, whether we finally see Ollie Hayes-Brown debut as that Category B rookie that we signed, whether Mackay Lafau will chip out in the ruck. Tom Lynch might be missing, but it's been announced that Asava Radigalia now needs knee surgery, so they're missing him. They're missing Rosie. Todd Marshall could still be another week out with his ankle, so we're now looking at the possibility of having 3 tall intercepting defenders out of that lineup. And even with Tom Lynch out, that allows a Jonty Fall, a Mackay Lafau. If we're going to have to bring in possibly Liam Fawcett because Harry Armstrong's done structural damage. We've got some other young kids that could be touting a debut this week. I just feel it opens up opportunity for our forward line to function a little bit better. Midfield-wise, obviously, they've got Zach Butter's going to be running rings around us. They've got Ollie Wines potentially to come back in fresh this week. But we've got Timmy Taranto, who played an incredible game, I thought, against Fremantle. Jacob Hopper needs to get back to his best because this year he's been a turnover merchant, but this could be a game where he turns it around. Sam Lawler has been great to watch. Seth Campbell's been great to watch. We get Nathan Broad back potentially this week, so that solidifies a Miller, Vlosten, Broad setup defensively with Bolter in the mix as well. I just think this is one of our best opportunities early to lock down a win. And with how I've seen Port Adelaide perform so far, I think Richmond have the capability of picking up a win here, which is a lot of people disagree with me, and some of you in the comment section or viewing might disagree as well, but I'm locking my boys in for our first win of the year. Heading on down to Western Australia, Optus Stadium, West Coast taking on Sydney. The temptation to tip West Coast here is huge. They will be looking for 3 on the trot. As you can see, some of these margins, I mean, the 205 to 34, I still remember that game like it was yesterday. That was absolutely disgusting. They were better second time around, but then last year, absolutely walled. Sydney coming off of the bye are going to be fresh. West Coast coming off of 2 wins in a row. They're going to have a lot of motivation, a lot of energy, a lot of confidence. This is going to be a great hit out. I actually think this is going to be a hell of a lot closer than what people recognize. Again, Heaney should be coming back in from his little injury problem. I think they're going to be without Errol Goulden for the next couple of months anyway. But in a ruck line where they're not truly established again, you're going to have somebody like a Brodie Grundy truly get off the chain. A Chad Warner and Isaac Heaney could absolutely pop off. If they don't lock down Charlie Curnow good enough, he could kick 4 or 5. Joel Amadi could step up. We've got Logan McDonald to step up. As much as I would love to see West Coast win, I am going to back Sydney in a close contest. I actually think Sydney are only going to win within 4 goals, which, given the scope of where these teams are at on paper and how people expected things to go down this year, within 4 goals is a huge achievement, I feel, especially when you see the score lines that have gone down in recent years. But I think Sydney just too comprehensively sound around the ground. I don't think West Coast can shut all that down. But if West Coast can bring that exciting, youthful, excitement that they've been bringing to these games, there's nothing stopping them. They could really pick up a win here if you want to go for an outside edge. Sunday afternoon, Melbourne hosting the Gold Coast at the MCG. Big news out of the Gold Coast is this 3 to 5 week injury that Christian Petrarca was sustaining with his hamstring has now turned into a 1 to 3 week injury. So he could be back as early as gather round. He could even be back round 5, round 6. It is absolutely a huge pickup for them. I think Gold Coast, though, again, a team coming fresh off the bye, their systems that they've got at the moment are absolutely incredible. They're coming up against a Melbourne team who struggled against Carlton in the first half, and what Gold Coast is going to do that Carlton didn't do is, while Carlton got that early jump, they failed to do anything in the second half. Gold Coast aren't going to afford that same luxury. If they get off the chain in the first half, you better believe they are still going to be competitive until that final siren. Gold Coast to win here. Having a look at the form as well, Melbourne did knock off the Gold Coast in the Gold Coast a couple of years back. But since then, Gold Coast has had Melbourne's number, including a pretty much 10-goal win against Melbourne down here at the MCG. So I've got to back in the systems of the Gold Coast here, and they will remain undefeated for another week. Speaking of undefeated, there is no surer a lock this weekend than tipping the Bulldogs to defeat Essendon. It has been announced that Nate Cuddy has sustained delayed concussion symptoms, so he's going to be missing this weekend. So that takes a spearhead out of their forward line. They got absolutely opened up by North Melbourne, despite the score line last weekend being 12 points. I feel North Melbourne were a lot better than a 2-goal the difference game. Bulldogs going to absolutely destroy them. Bontempelli's going to have 30 odd. Sam Darcy and Norton, I reckon between them will kick 10. It's going to be huge. This is going to be very ugly to watch. This could be the game where the dam wall breaks and Brad Scott's job is truly on the line. Just some of the results here. Minus 2024, it was close. It was a blowout both matches last year, and it's going to be worse this year. I'm actually thinking the Bulldogs by 80 plus points. Huge call, and if Essendon get within 10 goals, I think they've actually done something right, but the Bulldogs are going to absolutely massacre Essendon this weekend, which is ironic because on the Sunday, Jesus rose again, but unfortunately, Essendon's going to get put into a fucking tomb and locked in there forever. So, Bulldogs comfortably on Sunday. Final game of the round, Easter Monday football. Hawthorn going head-to-head with Geelong. I'm actually surprised Hawthorn going into this game heavy favourites. Very surprised. I think this game, as you can see, the form of the last 3 outings, convincingly 2 out of the 3 went to Geelong. And you have a look around the ground, Jai Newcomb has been carrying that midfield for Hawthorn, but Bailey Smith in good form, Max Holmes in good form. A Reece Stanley or a Blixarves, I would probably back in the ruck over a Ned Reeves or over a Lloyd Meek. Forward half of the ball, that's where the interesting, things happen, because Hawthorn have Gunston, who's been aging like fine wine. He's been incredible this year. Nick Watson is in good form. Ginnivan is in good form. But then on the flip side, Geelong, Jezza Cameron, Jack Martin, Sean Manor, Brian Myers. We have some contributors, Shannon Neal. This is going to be a very good game. I think defensively sound as well, because Barras, Sicily battle. Then you've got Tom Stewart, you've got O'Sullivan, you've got DeConning. All of these players that present strong interceptability, strong one-on-one defending. This is going to be absolute cinema to round out the weekend. And I'm going to go the Cats to get up and win. It's hard to back against them. I just think they've got it in them to win these big occasions. They will just, I know they struggled against Adelaide last week, don't get me wrong, but statistically, they should have won by a hell of a lot more. They're just in a position, I feel here, that their best is still the best in the competition. And while Hawthorn can, get the ball rolling by hand and get a really fast game, Geelong are happy to take the sting out of the game. And if they can get the game on their terms, they will absolutely shut down Hawthorn's run. This game specifically, though, is going to be very interesting to see, because we're going to see 2 polar opposite, styles go head to head. Hawthorn's run and carry, or Geelong's more methodic, kind of slow the ball down, maintain possession, chip around and pick out targets. Which one's going to be better? I think Geelong, but it could go either way. So my tips this weekend: Collingwood by 13, North Melbourne, Adelaide, Richmond, Sydney, Gold Coast, Bulldogs and Geelong. Gone a bit on the wayside for some, because obviously Brisbane going into this game is favourite, Carlton a favourite, Port Adelaide a favourite, and Hawthorn a favourite. So I've actually gone with a few outside chances, but I'm happy to lock in these tips this weekend. Sometimes you've got to do something a little bit different to break the mould. And again, it's all pending selection. If they bring in, for example, for the Richmond game, if Port Adelaide solidify their back half, maybe I change to Port Adelaide. With the West Coast game and the Sydney game, if there's no Isaac Heaney, maybe West Coast stays around in the conversation. For the Hawthorn game, if Geelong don't bring in a Dangerfield, if they're missing some players, if Hawthorn solidify their selection, maybe I go for Hawthorn. But outside of that, I'm happy with my selections this week. That is it for today's video. Do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, I would appreciate you hitting that like button down below. Again, if you want to get on board the tipping comp, all the information you need is in the description of this video. Go and help yourselves. And if you want to get on board the community we are building together, feel free to hit that subscribe button as well. Provided you are not supporting St Kilda or GWS, good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.